Welcome back to another episode of the Unblock Your BS podcast. I have been waiting for this man to come on this podcast for quite some time. He's one of the members of the Healthy Mentality program, and he has been such an inspiration to the men in the group, has an ability to be able to communicate vulnerably, authentically, and he even surprises himself. Why? Because he's 63 and he was a 24-year Army combat veteran who excelled in that world where the only acceptable emotion was anger. And after retiring and his tribe of the military disappearing, the quote unquote mission went silent, and alcohol became the band aid for a nervous system stuck on high alert and threat assessment. And on paper, he seemed fine, but inside he was really drowning. And so this raw story encourages most of us to really self reflect. And those of you that think that maybe men shouldn't be, talking about feelings, or this is just woo woo stuff, or this isn't for me, that was Jack. Yeah, that was definitely Jack. In fact, he is still surprised when he comes across things of like, I didn't know this, and how it impacted his 30 some odd year marriage. And he's like, wow, if I had just known this 30 years ago, things would have been radically different. And how instead of living in the past and all of the mistakes and all of the woulda, shoulda, couldas, he is now facing what is and how to move forward from a place of nervous system regulation, understanding himself, understanding others, and how to be a safe space, not only for others in his life, but most importantly for his own nervous system. So that things like alcohol and numbing out and distracting himself from the uncomfortable feelings is no longer something that he's willing to accept for himself because he understands he's worthy and deserving of learning this stuff. So we talk about how nervous system regulation, breathwork, and real true accountability and vulnerability inside of healthy mentality has helped Jack rebuild from the inside out, and how he's becoming the kind of man not only is he proud of, but that we are all in awe of and inspired by. So, Jack, if you're listening to this, which I know you are, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey and being such an amazing part of the community that we've created inside a Healthy Mentality. So, stay to the end because we do get into some coaching with Jack after he shares his story on things that are new layers of awareness for him to now challenge himself with that may apply to you. So let's get into today's episode with Healthy Mentality member Jack. Welcome to the Unblock Your BS podcast, Jack. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Why don't you share a little bit about how you kind of came to the point of even just applying for Healthy Mentality and what journey you've been on up until that point?
Well, I'll start with the point that I knew that I had a problem, and I was I'm 24-year Army veteran, combat veteran, and I did I excelled in the Army. I excelled in the Army because at the time I was in the Army, the only acceptable emotion was anger, and I had that in spades. I could do anger. Uh, the other emotions, not so well. And so I thrived in the military. I was a workaholic. I was promoted below the zone twice. Um, and so I was constantly in the field, deployed, or working. And the Army fed every need I had for achievement. Um, and I didn't realize at the time, but my self-worth was transactional. At home, um, I my physical life form was present, but mentally and emotionally, I was not there because I didn't know how to deal with feelings. So I numbed out my feelings with alcohol, and I would have been what the big book called at that time a heavy drinker. I was a whiskey for the horses, beer for my men kind of guy, and very proud of the fact that I was muddy boot soldier, um, and that served me well for the time I was in the Army. Now, it didn't serve me well in terms of uh, being a healthy partner in a marriage, being present for my children. Um, but I love my family. I love my children. I was an excellent provider.
Yeah.
Um, The problem for me really came about when I retired in 2010. And so when I retired in 2010, all of a sudden I got another job and I was working 9 to 5. But oh my God, there was what do I do with the rest of this time?
Yeah.
And so I started drinking heavier in the evenings. Um, and I didn't realize it at the time, but when I retired, I lost my tribe. I lost my sense of purpose. I lost my identity, stripping me of the uniform and everything that went into the culture, losing that culture. And all of a sudden, you throw me into this world with civilians. And I didn't know how to navigate with civilians. They weren't steeped in the Army values that I was steeped with of duty, selfless service, all these kind of things. So the anger, and to numb out that anger was alcohol, uh, because I didn't really have hard work anymore. There was no recognition in the civilian world. And so I drinking is progressive. I didn't even, you don't even realize when it is happening. It's so insidious, but all of a sudden, it takes more and more to just achieve those results of kind of getting to that happy spot that we're all looking for. People who are familiar with using alcohol, it would just take more and more, and then over time, you become well. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so on the weekends, the big football game starts at 11. Well, it's acceptable to start drinking at 10 a.m. if the football game's on at 11, and then before you know it, you really have a problem. Um, During this time frame, my 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 wife and I became her. She had her own life, her own career, and really became consumed in her career and with our children's lives. And I was more and more isolated, and I did not know where to ask for help. I just knew that I I could identify that I had a problem, and um, but I didn't know what the solution was. So I kept all this suppressed, and I didn't realize that trauma from my past, trauma from my childhood, trauma from my military experience, all this was building up because I never processed any of this, and it was just a I was just a pressure cooker, and the pressure was building, 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 and I was drinking more, drinking more, drinking more, and doing some other things that really were in contradiction to the values and the man that I thought I was. And when you wake up, you sober up, you realize that the only way a lot of times you can get involved in things outside the marriage and otherwise is if you have alcohol to give you that liquid courage or numb out the guilt that's associated with your behavior. And so in that moment, you are free to do what you think you deserve. I deserve this. But then there's always the next morning, and you sober up and you realize what you've done, and you violated that code and the values that you thought you stood for. And then, of course, it's time for another to have another drink.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. And so what happens for me was we were living overseas in a country where you could buy any medications that you wanted, as long as they weren't narcotics. And so I was treating my own high blood pressure. I was having my own pharmaceutical company. I was taking Zoloft at a small dosage for trying to turn off the obsessive thinking, blood pressure, whatever. And I didn't go to a doctor because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to have. I knew my blood pressure was high, and my anxiety was through the roof because once again, you don't connect the alcohol with anxiety, and so my anxiety was through the roof. Of course, you drink, okay, okay, and you're embarrassed because your anxiety. Well, fuck, I don't get what real men don't get anxiety. Real men aren't like this. And so you're trying to suppress that. And so you drink and then you're like, okay, now I'm back to Superman again. I'm in control. I'm in control. Um, we all, if for me, I never let myself be out of control. That's what I thought.
Right.
And so it had been going on 6 years. I hadn't been to a doctor. I hadn't, and we were moving back to I moved back to the States again, and I brought as much blood pressure medication and some other medications with me that I thought I wouldn't get arrested when I came into the country. And so I got here, I got a job. I was a very high functioning um, alcoholic. Um, and so I had a job and government service job now, retired, and working at a hospital and and not in a clinical role. Uh, but I ran out. There came a point in time where I ran out of all the medications I brought back, and the anxiety was through the roof here because, oh my God, I'm either going to have to go to a doctor to have them write a prescription, and they're not just going to write a prescription by me saying, "Hey, this is how I've been treating myself for the past 7 years." They're going to want to do a workup, blood pressure, all those kind of things. Or I could fly to Mexico and buy. I mean, this is how crazy our thought process gets. Sometimes I could fly to Mexico and buy more drugs, or
It's reality what you do.
so some he told me I could go to the hospital, the emergency room, and tell them, "Hey, I've ran out of my medication," and they would just give me medication. I tried that, and they refused to do that, of course. And then when I went in the back, and my blood pressure was through the roof, it's 180, over 110. And my heart rate was through the roof. And they brought me back, hooked me up because they weren't sure, if I was having a heart attack, what was going on. And so I was in my 50s. I was probably 55, 56. And, you know, that math once again is coming off. And then you get to a point where the pressure cooker really just explodes. And for the first so I was in the they had me in the bed, had me strapped up, and I just broke down. And for the first time in my life, I was honest with another human being, two nurses, about how much I was drinking, medicating myself, what was going on, and this is a VA hospital, what I was going through, and I just let it all out. And that was a catharsis for sure. And they said, "Well, sir, we're going to want to admit you. We really think you need to go to detox, self-admit to detox." No, I'm not going to do that. I'm fine. I got it under control. I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home. I just really need you to give me a prescription for my blood pressure. I promise I'll come back.
Wink, wink.
And I didn't know that this is a scene that they've seen many times before, because it's so often men like me, we think we're terminally unique, and we're we're just a long line of repeating the same story. And I they went and I was after a period of time, another woman came in, and I didn't know it at the time, but she was part of the trauma department at the VA, and she sat down beside me, and she said, we would like for you to stay with us for a couple of days. I said, no, no, I'm not doing that. I said, I'm good. I promise I'll come back. And she sat with me, and she said, sir, you've taken care of us for 24 years. Let us take care of you. And she held my hand literally, and we walked out of the emergency room, went to the floor that I said, listen, I got to be at work tomorrow. She said, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that for you. And I never turned over my power or anything else to another person, but I did. And that was 25 September 2018. And that day is the day I hit bottom. Now, it was a soft bottom compared to a lot of people's bottom, but still the same. That day began an incredible journey of discovery, of recovery, uh, and a journey that I'm still on today. But two things came out of that. And the first one was I admitted I admitted to another human being that I was powerless and I had a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And once you do that, you will be amazed at the support that will pour in for you. And you ask for you let other people help you. And I was always the person that helped other people. I was always the rock. I was always never show weakness. And so I attended some AA meetings. AA was good for me because it introduced me to um, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps. Now, AA was not for me as a program, but I got to tell you, I really believe everybody should do the 12 steps. Everybody could benefit from working through their resentments, all the things that go along with that. And like I say, I'm not a everybody has to find their own journey. And it's just one thing they would say in the rooms is take what you need and leave the rest. Well, I took what I needed, and the rest of it wasn't for me, but that was a part of my journey. And then I also availed myself of therapy. I went and saw a psychiatrist, and I started taking medication.
Prescribed.
Prescribed, yes, prescribed medication. No, that's the point. Thank you. And then also, because with a psychiatrist comes a therapist, and I started talking to another human being, and it's a long journey. And I went through several of them. My psychiatrist said, "Well, you keep firing the therapist that I assigned you," and it wasn't. The problem was they kept trying to put me into a box and try to start therapy at a point in time in the Army. But and I kept saying, no, no, you got to go back to my childhood and the trauma. And then we have to work our way forward because I was already had trauma problems before. And then the Army takes us, and then they indoctrinate us into becoming these time obsessed uh, machines, and more trauma occurs. but I was had problems before I came in the Army. So I finally got with a therapist. I've been with the same therapist for 3 years, and and we worked through. And what she kept saying, well, listen, I want you to read this book on self-esteem. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? What are you talking about self-esteem? I got so much self-esteem. Do you know who I am? I'm this rank. I'm this. I've done blah blah blah. And she said, no, you got to read. You got to learn. Because her point was, you got to learn to love yourself. And over time, oh my God, I had zero self-esteem. I didn't real I had no self-esteem. And that was very hard for me to accept. But I learned that for me to have self-esteem, it was always transactional. I always had to accomplish something. I always had to, you know, get promoted below the zone. I always had to do things. It was never. Now I look back, I believe no one could love me for me. And then I learned what it means to be a dismissive avoidant, and that dismissive avoidance. So instead of being able to deal with human emotions, I did everything in my power to avoid emotions. I was okay. What's the problem? This is the problem. Okay, here's a solution. Okay, I'm gonna sit over here in my recliner and watch the football game. And if my wife was angry, especially female emotion, I could not deal with. So I avoided that at all costs. It was easy for me to avoid it once I could start. If I was drinking, because my physical life form might be there, but believe me, my mentally and spiritually, I was not there, not present. And once I stopped drinking, that became a little more problematic. But now I see that, and I'm working through it. So therapy worked to a point, but then I as I've been working through to find out that I'm codependent, I've learned what codependent is, and people pleasing.
Mhm.
I'm really starting to really get down to the nitty gritty, because it's one thing to understand why you are in your behavior, uh, but that's only half the work. The hard part is doing the work to change the behavior, to change who you are and become a different person. And that may mean that you are going to have to like, for me, I had to get to a point where I realized that my marriage couldn't be saved. And that's very difficult point, because that means I have to admit failure. But I knew that I wanted more from life than what I have. And after a long term, and so I found Unblock Your BS on by watching a TikTok video. And the video I watched was about you and your spouse are roommates. And I watched some more, and Tara, it really spoke to me. And it's the first time I've ever done this. I reached out for a session, and now I've joined the men's group. And the men's group, this has helped me tremendously, because once again, I've really gotten into um, the codependency, the people pleasing, and the stuff that therapy was great, but therapy only took me to a certain point. But now, as we start drilling down further and really trying to change the behavior, I really need to find a coach. And that's what Unblock Your BS and Tara's done for me. And the other thing is, I'm part of this men's group, and I have never in my life ever told another man that it would admit weakness, or what I was going through. And so for the group, all of a sudden, I'm sharing, but I'm also hearing that other men have the same similar problems and are going through it. And oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person doing this. And my story helps other people. other men in the group, but their stories helped me. And so that's kind of how I wound up here. But I will tell you that all men, whether you're first responders, whether you're military, um, at some point in time, that mask that you're hiding behind is going to be stripped away. You're either going to die or you're going to retire. And all of that, all your identity is going to be taken away. And then you're stuck with you. And we see it a lot in our community. A lot of people are choosing to unalive themselves, maybe actively by doing with a weapon, or they do it by they just drink themselves to death. And I could have stayed on that path, my friends. I could have stayed on. I could have kept drinking. My wife and family would have been fine. I would have been catatonic over there in the recliner. Uh, I would have been making trips to the liquor store, buying more wine, buying more gin, vodka, etc. But I chose a different route, a harder route, and I can't tell you how um, thankful that I am that my children are seeing me. Because I don't, I could spend the hour talking about generational trauma and what was passed down from my parents to me, and but I am trying to break generational trauma here, and I'm also trying to be an example, not just for my biological children, but for my son-in-laws as well, to show them what a man, uh, not being sensitive, not being a pussy, not being all those kind of things that we convince ourselves of, but you can be an emotionally attuned, emotionally self-regulated man. And Brene Brown said that vulnerability is a superpower. And I have found the more vulnerable I am, the more willing I am to share my story, the more willing I am to admit I'm human, the blessings and the love and support just come pouring back into me so much. So that's it.
That's thank you. I could sit here and listen to you talk all day. You have such a way with storytelling. And I think that's been a huge impact for the men in the program is you sharing so much of your journey and what you're learning and even your reactions in real time, which I always get a kick out of. We have our calls on Sunday and Jack always comes on. And he's like, here's what I learned this week. And it just blew my mind. And so I know how relatable your story is. And as somebody who was married to the military, special warfare specifically, I have seen it so many times of, yes, they're conditioned to be robots, right? And then when they get out into the civilian world and all support goes away and the VA is backed up on mental health stuff, how they just struggle indefinitely. And alcohol is very effective at what it's meant to do, which is numb you out. So when we're talking about using substances or addictions, whether it's numbing, distracting, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways we can look at addictions. They're really effective at instantly solving a specific pain point that you don't know how to solve in any other way. And that's why, to me, nervous system regulation, learning skills and tools to regulate your nervous system is a key part of being able to get through addictions because you need to be able to, like, if we look at alcohol as a numbing agent, if you don't know how to sit and tolerate the feelings or what comes with not drinking, well, yeah, you're going to keep going back because it works. Right? And so it's replacing it with tools that are less destructive in the long term and less destructive to those around you. And that to me, breath work obviously is one of those things that I preach and will always continue to preach. Have you done breath work yet? I know you've tried a little bit. Have we done a full session?
So I did the breath work associated with the inner child
Mhm.
visualization. And once again, for the men, I'm 63 years old, and for me to sit here and be talking about inner child work and is, eh, I mean, old me would immediately have changed the channel or turned it off. But I'm just telling you, so I did that work, and I was just amazed at what came out. Um, and I've tried the longer breathwork sessions. I think I'm overthinking it. I'll talk about some of that this afternoon during our meeting about what I want to do and some places I want to go. But this um this journey into learning what is driving your behavior, and it's all patterns. I've been playing out the same patterns, and the things that the behaviors that I did were survival behaviors that got me to this point in time in my life. Okay. And they served me well. I had an excellent career. I have children that have graduated from college, and all those kind of things, but they're not, I, I don't need them now. And I want to break those patterns. But breaking patterns that you've had for 62, 63 years is very difficult. That's where this men's group and the breath work Tara's talking about come in. And so I'm not there yet. I'm not sure if I'll get there because I probably need another 100 years to.
Nonsense. You should get in a good time. I like challenges. Yeah, because usually, and here's what can happen with the breath work. And we can talk about this right now because I think it's gonna be relevant for people who are like, what is this woo-woo shit you keep talking about? When you start to get into the breath work, where is the resistance? What's coming up for you of
Okay, so
it's hard to get into?
okay, so I was going to talk about this. I First off, I have the other men in the group talked about their experiences, okay, where they were having these emotional breakthroughs, maybe yelling or their fingers clamping up.
Yeah.
Okay, that reminds me of the religious trauma that I experienced as a child because when I would hear people talk about when they got saved, accepted Jesus, and they had a lightning bolt and their life changed forever and it was a big emotional experience. Okay, well, I kind of was expecting that the first time I did my breath work that I was going to have this experience. So as I'm getting into it, first off, I'm probably overthinking it. So I'm going and doing the
Yep.
and I didn't have that experience that as it was described, but I will tell you that I as I went all the way through it, what and you talked about what are the thought processes that are coming up for you. Oh, I was I was amazed at the recurring uh codependency relationship that I have been in and that has been driving my behavior from the person that I have been seeking affirmation from. And so once again, that was encouraging. But the other one too, Terry, is that I recognized somatic breath work, Vargas nerve, mother wound, father wound. I've got all this stuff that I need to somehow process and put together at this point in time of my recovery and healing that I'm getting overwhelmed with it and I can't figure out, do I do this first? How do I put all this together?
Yeah. Do you mind if I unpack that with you?
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things that came up. This concept of expectations, right? It has to look like somebody else. It's that comparison. My experience is not like theirs, so I must be doing it wrong. Right. So it's already a value system of right and wrong. So you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to do it the right way that your experience is going to look like somebody else's. So it's already kind of reinforcing that achievement that it has to be right. I have to do it better. I have to do it the best. I have to, right? It's kind of just, again, it brings that up. You talked about, well, talk to me about the overwhelm. What specifically are you labeling as overwhelm? Where does the overwhelm come in?
Overwhelm?
Yeah.
Well, I am overwhelmed, I think, because I'm anticipating a physiological reaction
So
from
another
the breath work.
expectation.
Yeah, that's another expectation. Secondly, I have an expectation that I'm supposed to have some kind of eureka moment, eye-opening moment. But, when I first started the program, I kept asking I asked you a couple of times, "Well, do I do this first? Do I do this first?" And it was kind of that thought process, well, you just of expectation of this whole or wrong thing. Am I doing it right? I have to do it right. I want to see the framework and I want to do. A, B, C, B. There you go. And so all of this, once again, this is the value of this kind of program, because you're sitting there and you don't even realize that you're a slave to this behavior. So that's one part of it. And I think also, I think there is a fear of being out of control
Mhm. That makes sense.
when I go through it. And so I've wrestled with, okay, where's an isolated location I can do the breath work? Because heaven help me if somebody were to come in and I was in the fetal position on the floor crying, or and my hands are, that kind of thing. The And I want to understand it. And so that's where, the okay, the Vargas nerve, the somatic healing, and okay, well, that's
The
important. Well,
more I
I
know, the more I can control my experience, and it
just
to be
all in on believing that this is the answer, right?
yeah. That's what I'm saying is that breath work actually mirrors back to you where your work is, even when it quote unquote doesn't work. You're just not aware that it actually is working. It's
Well, there you go.
thing
Well, then
that
it's mirroring back to me. You should be, you're seeing me then.
yes. So let's talk about this. Um, when I say uncertainty, what comes up for you? If you go into a situation where the outcome is uncertain.
Well, I've got to first off, I believe that when you say that the outcome is uncertain, I'm going to make the outcome certain. I'm going to figure out how I can gain control of whatever situation I'm in.
Yeah. True or false, you
And
cannot control the future. That the future is anything but certain.
okay,
Let's go down that.
I'm on my honest answer then. Okay. So I am arrogant enough to believe that while I can't control the future, I can set conditions and shape their
Mm,
outcome or whatever is happening. So if you, whatever it is, I mean, it's the uncertainty. I mean, my whole military training, my whole military background, I was put in situations where, there is no, oh shit, we didn't train for this at the National Training Center. Oh, and you've got to figure that out. And
uncertainty meant death in your world.
yeah. And so I can't tolerate, yes. So I cannot tolerate uncertainty. So you're, I try to control, I want to control the breath work. I want to know at the exact point I'm supposed to experience something.
Yeah.
So
And this is part of the healing journey is having the awareness that you actually aren't in control of anything outside of you and the future. There you had no idea how this interview was gonna go. And we even started it and you paused it and said, "Well, hold on, let me go back," right? As a sense of control. So this is part of that of and maybe this is the free fall you need to have is I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm going to rewire my brain to start to focus on the best case scenario. And I know you have a little bit of a faith background, but just going, I trust God more than myself, or I trust, the universe to put things in front of me that I wouldn't be able to control. I mean, think about raising children. There's so much unpredictability in that.
8 seconds. Okay. So I was brought up in a very, I was brought up in a Southern Baptist hellfire and brimstone upbringing. And I that certainly preach, don't, if you ever experienced an altar call where, don't leave this church and without accepting you might get killed in a car wreck kind of.
Ex
And so I grew up in that, and so many times I prayed that, went through the whole road to salvation, accepting Jesus, but nothing ever happened. I never had that lightning bolt emotional, because I'm an INTJ. I'm a person who, once again, I'm emotionally avoidant. And so I never had that emotional experience. So I just assumed that God rejected me.
Mm,
So over time, I rejected God. Okay. I read every work of, of the great eight. I read Bertrand Russell. I read all the the books proving that I'm a man of reason. When I went to AA meetings and I started listening to speaker tapes, and I heard the stories of people who had just made a total, just had absolutely ruined their lives, crashed their lives of their family, their loved ones. And I heard them tell their story of recovery and that they were happy, joyous, and free. And I went to some meetings and I saw people who had destroyed their lives, but they had rebuilt them. I really, I really discovered God and became much more aware of a spiritual side of me, and I call my higher power now. Uh, and so I am now. I do accept that. Looking back on things, that there had to be something outside of myself. I'm here, so I discovered God that way. So I do have a spiritual background now, and I'm much more tuned with being open. But I still always am looking at anything through a very cynical lens when it comes to
Sure.
that kind of stuff. So,
And part of that's kind of, it's not a bad thing to have, right? Um, do you find that during the breath work, you're really in your head? You're thinking,
yes, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's getting into your body. So part of it is like scanning your body. So when you notice those thoughts coming up of like, well, what is this supposed to mean? Well, what am I supposed to be doing this? Or are we both breath holding right now? It's like, nope, it doesn't matter. Get back into my body. Or
And I'm anticipating, okay, when is this part on the end and when are we going
so there's,
to do this?
I don't know, we have like 45 different breathwork sessions. There's a couple I'm actually going to recommend that throws the pattern out of it. So most of them follow a very specific pattern, which a lot of people find comfort in that because they know what to expect. So they can feel safer to not have to like worry, am I doing it right? And they can go into just the breathing. But if that is actually working against you, where the pattern is now putting this expectation, this pressure on you, and then this, kind of staying in your head, there's a couple of other ones that I might recommend for you that throw the pattern out the window and it's very intuitively led. And then there's also ones that are a little bit slower. So that may actually create more discomfort in your nervous system to have to slow down and be gentle with yourself rather than so hard, so much force. So those are two that I'll specifically recommend. But that's where it's so interesting about breath work is that it is highlighting the areas to work on. And it's getting you out of your head and into your body. And it may be that the environment you're doing it in as well, like if you know there's somebody home, I generally recommend doing it where nobody's around to hear you so that you can feel safe to let out what your body needs to let out. Did you watch the polar bear video we have in the training?
No. Oh, I did. No, I did. I did. That was wonderful. Early on, I did. Yes, that was
Yeah.
great.
So just remind yourself, this is my body's issue, not my brain's issue. Like my body knows how to do this. I trust my body knows how to do this. So I'm just going to get my head out of the way so that my body can do whatever it needs to do. And getting some movement in, getting sound going really helps the body to discharge it. So nobody really sees me, what I'm doing, because you all have your eyes closed, but I am when I'm going through the breath work, like, my body is so in tune with when I start to breathe with you guys, I have to move that energy because my body's like, "Oh, we're releasing now," and I'm like, "Nope, hold it together, we're facilitating." But I'm constantly moving that energy in my body because 'cause I've learned that's how my body needs to get it out.
So, Tara, let me ask. So, this is one of the things that I have been overthinking is, okay, what position do I sit in when I'm doing the breath work?
You lay down.
Do I sit up or do I lay flat on my back or do I mean, you can just see upset. I'm
Okay,
trying to
so
control.
what does it mean if you sit down versus lay down, or why do you have to know that answer?
Well, because am I going to get the full value if I'm sitting up in a chair and I'm my back's starting to hurt just a little bit, or I want it because I haven't even thought about this thing about getting up and moving because I was tied to I've got to be laying down or my eyes closed and I got to do it right. No, yes, I've got to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's something to be said about the value systems that we carry, that there's right, wrong, good, and bad. And I throw all of that out the window because who determines what's right, what's wrong, what's good or bad? Your upbringing, your religious beliefs. other people telling you what's right, wrong, good, or bad. And that's part of this healing journey, the self-awareness journey is what do I choose is right versus wrong in this? What do I choose is good or bad that resonates with me? Not saying throw all of your values out, but really evaluate who's right, wrong, good, or bad is that? Like most men are taught that feelings are make you weak. Somebody else taught you that. You weren't born thinking that. So we can look at how does that serve me? Well, in the military, it served you very well. So it was rewarded. Personal life, not so much. So then we get to go, who is Jack beneath all of this? What does Jack want to believe? What does he choose to believe? I choose to believe there's no wrong way to do this. I choose that I'm going to trust Tara's and her voice in this, and I'm just going to follow that and we'll see what happens. And it's practicing that detachment from the outcome, that it's going to be exactly what it needs to be. If I'm frustrated at the end of it, cool, there's something for me to work on. If I feel at peace and I took a nap, great, that's exactly what my body needed. There is no wrong way to do this. And the more you get comfortable with there's not a right or wrong way to do it, the actually more benefit you'll get from it. It just may not look like everybody else's. So
Well,
you give yourself
that
permission
was
to
worth
say,
that was worth the price of admission because that's really a revelation for me about the whole value system thing for me because and it's from my upbringing and are you a good boy or are you a bad boy? And if you're a bad boy, well, we're going to withhold approval, we're going to withhold love. And so it gets back into this transactional thing and
that was the root of where codependency was created.
yes, and so and then once again, if we won't go into the whole dismissive avoidant thing, but I clearly knew if I was outside my mother's approval, and I would do everything I could to get back into it because it was a very passive aggressive type
Yeah.
thing. And then my whole career has been the the rules, time, right or wrong. I don't even for me the thought process that you just talked about, I'm gonna have to unpack that because I don't it's gonna be difficult for me to get to detaching from the outcome because I'm so outcome and results driven.
No, you're not. You just like feeling in control. It gives you a sense of security and safety. And so it's learning to find safety when you're not in control. Part of that is regulating your nervous system so that you feel safe regardless of an outcome.
You're gonna help me get there, right?
Yes, of course. Another thing I want to bring up, I want you to never say again, I'm a dismissive avoidant. Delete that. That's an identity based statement. Your dismissive avoidance, whatever the label is, it's a pattern of behaviors that serve to protect you. Did it not?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not an identity. It's not who you are. It was protective mechanisms that you're actively working to repair and heal, and you're probably far less avoidant now than you used to be. Very much so. Go of that identity. Like go of the identity of Army veteran and how amazing I was back then. You are Jack now. Yeah. And you get to decide who Jack is in every single moment. Now that you have the awareness and you get to go, cool, I can heal that. I can work on that. We're not going to live in the past of who you used to be and how you used to behave, good or bad. You're Jack now. So what does Jack want to do today? What does Jack want to do tomorrow? Okay. It takes practice to kind of let that go and start to be in the present rather than living in the past or worried about the future. But you will find that peace is in the moment, not in the control of the future or the shame of the past. I know you're gonna journal this and we'll talk about it tonight.
Yes, I am. I'm got copious notes.
Yeah, he always shows up with his notes and they're so good and they're so deep. Well, let me ask you this. Out of the trainings in the program, so we have a course hub with 6 different modules. What do you think has been the most impactful for you up to this point?
Well, how childhood affects our adult relationships, big T trauma, little T trauma explained, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I went and then identify your patterns, but when I went through the because I had never thought about little T trauma, and you remember you had there's the example of the tree and the leaves, and the leaves are the trauma, little T. Man, I used this now when I started picking up the leaves, I just had to get a rake and start raking, and I was amazed at the rejection, neglect, not feeling good enough, comparison, never being comforted. Um, you know, I, you just did not show emotion when I was growing up. I mean, if you were getting whipped, uh, and you started crying, it was stop crying or you'll get some more of this kind of thing. Or if you get hurt, stop crying. And then even joy, if you were acting out, it was, go outside, take that outside. Don't, you were never, ever dealt with that. So as I started, and then I had some big T trauma, but as I started working through that, that was the, and then what is healing? Um, I really started having some moments there, and then I did the inner child visualization. Um, but the other one, Tara, I would say is that never really understood what codependency was until I did the section in the book about codependency. And I didn't understand people pleasing. I could maybe have kind of given an answer to sound like I knew what I was talking about, but I had never really worked through uh, what it meant to be codependent. And what I found was that, oh shit, I'm in a codependent relationship with my wife, who's in a severe, extreme codependent relationship with our adult children. And I'm funding that codependency through my codependency with her. And you're sitting there and you're going, oh my God, it was all right there. And I got a PhD in people pleasing. I didn't know I would have thought people pleasing. I'm not a people pleaser. I'm not you know who I am. And I was constantly seeking validation and approval from everyone and never taking care of my own needs, never even thinking about my needs. The whole selfless service thing, the whole duty, all those values that you get inculcated with in the army and in my upbringing. It took me a while to even be able to have the thought write down what my needs are, because I had never thought in those terms. My needs are to satisfying other people's needs who don't even appreciate it. They just expect it now.
Yeah,
Uh,
responsible for how other people feel.
yeah, and then the resentment that comes along with, you guys aren't thanking me for all the stuff I'm doing. So I'm going to resent the hell out of you. And I'm going to have this big battle inside my head and ruminate. Um, but not had the ability to express it because I don't know how to express my emotions. But I will tell you this, that as I've worked through this, I now have my feeling wheel. Um, and so I have learned that all the anger, because the only emotion I could identify was anger. But when I actually started following some instructions and went up and listened to people, and I took the time to go through and, well, what am I actually really feeling? Oh shit, I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling guilty. And then I worked it up and that's to sadness. And then so often as I worked through, it was fear. Rarely ever was the emotion that I was feeling, because as you've taught me, anger is a secondary emotion. And so as I started identifying the and working my way through the emotion wheel, and it takes a little time, you feel kind of silly. But once you actually do it, you start to see the value that so much of what I carry is from wounds from my childhood and that little boy that you're talking about, and that anger gave me a way of processing the emotion the way I viewed myself as this man, this combat veteran, this. But actually, when you start doing the work, you realize that oh my God, the shame. I've carried so much shame and fear that, and then I think about the amount of alcohol that I consumed. Not out of regret, it's what it took for me to get through the day. So it's a coping mechanism. But I think about the time that I was shutting, instead of dealing with the shame or the fear, I numbed that out and then got back to a place where I could say whatever I was feeling was anger. So,
Shame was the protection and the reinforcement of I am bad and like evidence that I am bad. Look how bad I am. Look at all the behaviors that I make, rather than this concept of radical responsibility where I accept how I behaved in the past. I don't shame myself for it. I recognize it was part of the journey to get me to who I am now. Right. And I can go back and make amends. Right. I can go back and take responsibility and accountability. But accountability isn't groveling, begging for forgiveness, it's changing behavior. Right. And part of that may be asking for forgiveness or seeking out to repair with people that your behavior had a negative effect on. But it's not going back of like, I am bad. You can look at it as I'm a student and I'm learning. And man, did I learn from that.
well, yes, because this thing about, if you can't make an amends, so you have to understand. I mean, for me, I gave power to people who I had hurt decades ago, and who were holding that over me and withholding affirmation or approval. I was a hostage to the shame and the guilt, and they never ever, because some people just are not going to forgive you. There's some things, or they may forgive you, but they have benefited from you being in this guilt and shame cycle by
A performative action to try
yeah, there you
that
go. There, yeah, that's what I'm
clear.
trying to say. And so for me, I finally got to a point where I said no, no more. And that's when I filed for divorce. And because I finally saw the power that I believe that my spouse was unconsciously, most likely unconsciously using, withholding affirmation, withholding approval because of all the benefits that came along with me trying to constantly uh, seek that affirmation from her. Um, and it amazes me to say that, because see, I didn't need that when I was in the army, because I got affirmation in droves from the army. The army constantly awards, promotions, uh, parades, for my all those kind of things. I didn't need affirmation from home because I got affirmation in my career. But once again, when you retire, first responders, military people, that source of affirmation is removed. And then you're stuck with you, who you probably don't like. You just from hearing my story, you realize that I don't even know who.
I don't know that you didn't need the affirmations from home. I don't know that you valued the affirmations you got there, because typically what I see, and this may not be your story, is that oftentimes men don't value how their partner values them, right? So a lot of women just need you to be with them, like talk about their emotions rather than problem solving, but you value problem solving, you value action, you value doing. And it gets really confusing when your partner just needs you to be there with them or be there with her, be present. And that feels uncomfortable. She needs you to be present with the emotion. I don't know how to handle the emotion. Right. And so you didn't value what may have been the affirmations your wife was trying to give you, or just generically what women.
So I was so scared. So once again, though, my physical life form was present with my spouse, but mentally I was not there because I had numbed all that out with alcohol. And so I can only imagine what it's like to be. And let me tell you something. You're exactly right. If she, I've learned this through the program also, is what women, you know, need, and it's not for me to solve their fucking problems.
Most of the time, it's not.
Cause I got a problem. Okay, well, I don't know why we're in this circular conversation and we have to keep going over the same damn thing. I've told you what a solution is. Now, let's watch the football game or whatever.
Let's move on. Oh. That's their ego thinking that you've solved the correct problem, but without having the conversation, we don't actually know what the
I control whatever. Oh, I do not want to see you cry. I do not want to. So I'm sorry, whatever. Oh, I got a field problem coming up. I gotta run. Or you drink yourself into such a catatonic state that it's pointless for her to even try to carry on a conversation with you. Yeah, that sucks. So that was
disconnected in all areas of our life. Yeah, beautiful. Well, Jack, let me ask you this. This will be my final question for you. To the Jack of, let's say it was like early August, as you were getting ready to apply, or you didn't know the program exists, but you happened to stumble across my stuff, and he's kind of weighing whether he should look into this program or not. What advice would you give him?
the advice I would give him is that it's simple. Just do it. Not the program. Just sign up for the introductory call with Tara. It's free. Okay. And I tell you that you got to be prepared because she's going to call you out, and which was good for me because uh, it gave me a different way of thinking. So just do it. And then you will see that. And I would also encourage you, especially like me, if you have been isolating yourself and not shared with others, to try the group out. There's a cost associated with it, but I promise you, to hear other men telling their stories from different perspectives, because some of them have the spouse is the problem, or they've um it's not your problem, but to hear that other men are going through emotional things, and that the other men are like you. They didn't know how to deal with their emotions and feelings. Uh, there's a power to that, and I think it is a spiritual power, and it doesn't. You're going to have anonymity, and so it's whatever thing that you're scared of or you're telling yourself is the reason you're not doing it. You're only doing it because I believe that you probably actually don't want to take a hard look at yourself. You don't want to do the work associated with getting better. You don't want to take ownership of your own shit, and you want to blame others. So,
Yeah. And I remember on your call, I love that you said this. You said, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
yeah.
And you're like, I'm about ready to do this. Yeah, that was beautiful. Well, Jack, thanks so much for sharing your story. I'll just speak for the other men in the program. We just love hearing you speak and your journey and you sharing vulnerably and honestly with every part of this process. And it has made such an impact just on me to see a man like you that stereotypically would not be the one who wants to talk about this stuff. For you to go, oh my God, had I known this stuff years ago, even you talking about learning about women's hormones, which we do have a training on, you're like, man, if I had known that 30 years ago, life would. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And if you are interested in learning more about the Healthy Mentality program, you can go to unblockyourbs.com/healthymen, and you can we'll leave the link in the show notes as well. So have a good one.